Welcome to the Preserve, Protect, Promote Saving Our History and Heritage Through Historic Preservation webinar. I am Leslie Miller, National Chair of the Historic Preservation Committee, and I'm excited to share information about this important committee, including some new initiatives with you. Historic preservation, it's what we do. Historic preservation has been the mission of NSDAR from the beginning. As early as October 1891, with only about 1,800 members, the National Society began discussing the need for a permanent home, a place for assembly, to conduct business, and a place to secure and protect records and valuable artifacts. History is essential to democracy, and it is up to us to preserve our nation's history for future generations. Sharing our mission with the public and promoting historic preservation in our communities is necessary and should be a part of the work of each and every chapter. Be an advocate in protecting historic sites and properties. Important sites can fall into obscurity and become neglected. Raising awareness of the importance of sites that tell the story of our community's history can lead to a more informed public and enhanced appreciation for its significance. But preservation is not limited to sites. It also includes historical records and our material culture or artifacts that tell our story. Work to preserve sites, historic records, and historic artifacts through proper conservation and care. Seek professional advice on best practices for conservation and partner with museums and preservation organizations to do it correctly. Learn the best methods and protocols for preservation. Use best practices and be good stewards of the legacy. We can do it. DAR has always set high standards. Historic preservation is not just about the restoration of historic buildings or sites, but also includes historical artifacts, furnishings, documents, paintings, and textiles can be damaged by neglect. Overexposure to light and the environment can cause these to fade or be bleached. Excessive heat, temperature variations, or humidity will cause damage too. Varnish on paintings will turn brown over time. Consult preservation and museum experts for proper care and conservation protocols. Be good stewards of what you own. Promote historic preservation. Raise public awareness through recognizing outstanding efforts with DAR Historic Preservation Medals and recognition awards. Work with local entities to secure a DAR Historic Preservation grant to further their work. Volunteer at local historic sites, museums, and archives. Be a part of preservation. Share the message through programs and events. Set an example and keep historic preservation front and center and on the minds of everyone. The Historic Preservation Committee, established in 2008, seeks to honor the nation's heritage, preserve it for the future, and celebrate our rich history. NSDAR offers historic preservation grants, formerly the Special Projects Grants, historic preservation medals, and the Historic Preservation Recognition Awards, Historic Preservation Project Contests, Historic Preservation Sites and Properties Database, resources and tools to help chapters carry out the work. Historic preservation grants are a new part of this committee. Through the Historic Preservation Grants Program, NSDAR provides financial support for local community projects, which exemplify the Society's historic preservation mission. $250,000 in grants will be awarded annually to support historic preservation in our communities. The maximum award will be $10,000, and smaller projects are encouraged. In order to assure ultimate completion of the project, all other funding beyond that requested via this grant must be already firmly secured. Matching funds are required. Projects should be tangible and long-lived with lasting historic preservation benefit. All grants must be sponsored by a DAR chapter or state organization. Examples of projects considered for grant funding include restoration of historic buildings, digitization or preservation of documents and records, preservation of historical items, erection of new or rededication or relocation of existing historical sites markers, cemetery headstone and monument conservation. The grant forms and detailed instructions can be found on the DAR members' website. The National Vice Chairman administers the grant process. Past historic grant recipients include conservation of a rare 18th century silk dress owned by Eliza Pinckney by the Charleston Museum. The $5,000 grant was sponsored by the Eliza Lucas Pinckney chapter in South Carolina, who ultimately raised more than $23,000 for this project. The Piankashaw chapter NSDAR in New Albany, Indiana, received a $7,000 grant in the 2015-2016 cycle. The chapter owns the historic Scribner House, which was purchased in 1917 from member Harriet Scribner. After her death, the house was opened as a museum to celebrate the Scribner family and their part in local history. The house, built in 1814, is the oldest in New Albany and was in need of a new roof to safeguard against damage to the newly restored interior. After Hurricane Katrina, the former New Orleans Mental Health Center in Algiers, Louisiana, was scheduled for demolition. On the building's facade was a mosaic mural over 50 feet long, crafted in 1963 entirely of stone by artist Conrad Albrizio. It features an idyllic depiction of life as it should be, filled with friends, fun, and happy fantasy, and designed to bring joy to those who frequented the facility. The mosaic was removed in 2009 and had been in storage ever since. The Louisiana State Society, NSDAR, was involved in Phase 4 of the project to restore the mosaic to its former glory. A $10,000 grant from NSDAR provided funding to enable the conservator to create flat plane casting panels to embed the stone tiles in new material, bond it to aluminum honeycomb panels, and create portable panels so the mosaic could be transported and installed at the State Museum when the restoration was completed. Go to the DAR members' website for more information and guidelines and application forms. The DAR public website also has information and application forms. You may contact the Historic Preservation Grants Vice Chair at hpgrants@nsdar.org with any questions. There are several ways to recognize significant preservation work in your community. The Historic Preservation Medal recognizes and honors a person who has done exemplary work over a long period of time in establishing a historic district, preserving a local landmark, restoring or preserving objects of historic cultural significance, or establishing or participating in oral history projects. Youth leadership and education as it pertains to historic preservation at the regional, state, and/or national level. This is the highest honor awarded by the National Society for Historic Preservation. This non-competitive award is administered by the National Chair with no timeline for applications. If the application is successful, the National Chair will send a letter of approval to notify the chapter or state society that it may purchase a Historic Preservation Medal directly from the official jewelers, and a certificate will be sent by the Office of the Reporter General. The National Chair can be reached at darhistoricpreservation@gmail.com. The Historic Preservation Recognition Award recognizes and honors an individual or group that has done recent remarkable volunteer work at the community level. The award may be presented to DAR members and non-members and recognizes achievements in all areas of historic preservation: buildings, landmarks, monuments, cemeteries, historic districts, statues, museum collections, manuscripts, documents, and archival materials. It also includes writing or compiling and publishing books on historic preservation projects, historical properties, genealogical and courthouse records, and photography collections, as well as compiling oral histories and serving as historical guides, interpreters, or docents. This award may be presented by state societies or chapters and is administered by the National Vice Chair Historic Preservation Recognition Award. This is a non-competitive recognition award with no timeline for applications. Once the applicant has been approved by the National Vice Chair, she will send a letter of approval for the purchase from the DAR store of a pin and certificate. The purpose of the Historic Preservation Contest is to recognize and honor an NSDAR chapter or state society that has completed an outstanding project in historic preservation. Projects could involve preserving a historic site, landmark, historic district, or property, all of which may be publicly, privately, or DAR owned. The project must be sponsored by an NSDAR chapter or state society and have been completed in the past 2 years. The Historic Preservation Project Contest is administered by the National Vice Chairman. After the entries are judged, states send their first place winners to the division level. Non-DAR judges should be used both at the state and division level. Division first place winners are forwarded to the National Vice Chair. Division level winners are given certificates by their respective division chairs. National first, second, and third place chapter and state society winners are determined by non-DAR judges, and certificates are presented at Continental Congress each year. Some examples of past Historic Preservation Project contest winners include the Justice Bell Restoration by the Pennsylvania State Society. The Justice Bell, on display in the Valley Forge Memorial Bell Tower at Valley Forge Historical Park in Pennsylvania, is an exact replica of the size of the original Liberty Bell. This bell dates to 1915 when it was commissioned by Catherine Wentworth Rauschenberger of Pennsylvania to call attention to the fight for women's suffrage. She had "Established Justice" added to the inscription. The bell became a symbol of women's suffrage and traveled 5,000 miles throughout Pennsylvania and was used in rallies in Chicago and Washington, D.C., beginning in 1915. The bell has been displayed in the Valley Forge Memorial Bell Tower since the 1920s. Pennsylvania Daughters recognized the need to restore the bell and refurbish the cast iron A-stands and replace the wooden yoke. The Pennsylvania State Society committed to the $16,000 restoration and achieved this with a matching grant from NSDAR. New signage was installed describing the history of the Justice Bell and acknowledging the involvement of the Pennsylvania State Society DAR and the National Society Daughters of the American Revolution. The Adam Holliday Chapter Daughters of the American Revolution completed major restorations at the Holliday Burial Ground in 2016. Dating back to the 1700s, this cemetery holds the remains of Revolutionary War patriot Adam Holliday and members of his family. A total of 6 Revolutionary War patriots are buried there. Markers had been vandalized, knocked over, and were strewn across the cemetery. Gravestones were restored, aligned, and cleaned. A 1938 DAR marker was refurbished. This project was a collaborative effort with other community partners. The Bethel Fife and Drum chapter raised $10,000 in less than 5 months to restore a classroom in the historic Bethel Township School, which was built in 1905. Now owned by the Bethel Park Historical Society, plans were developed to turn the historic building into a community hub known as the Schoolhouse Arts and History Center. The chapter agreed to sponsor the renovation of one of the classrooms. Other community partners also collaborated on this preservation effort. In return for the DAR chapter's support, the center agreed to provide a permanent meeting place for the chapter. Historic Preservation Project Contest first, second, and third place national winners are recognized during the Historic Preservation Luncheon at Continental Congress. Submit your projects using the application form and make plans to attend the event. Since 1890, the National Society, DAR, along with DAR chapters and state societies, have been involved in the preservation of sites and properties. The Historic Sites and Property Preservation Project catalogs all NSDAR sites and properties and determines the condition and tourism availability of each. Location, funding, historical significance, historical designations, promotional material, and availability information are needed for each site and property. Also requested are photographs in high resolution. The Historic Preservation Committee requests that state societies and chapters fill out the NSDAR Historic Sites and Property Report Form for properties not already included and submit to the National Vice Chair. The information from the reports will be added to the existing database and to a map of the United States showing the location of each site or property and giving a description. Members are encouraged to explore this map on the DAR members website. Locate properties in your state or in places you might want to visit. The National Vice Chair Sites and Properties Database and the National Vice Chair Site and Property Database Webmaster are responsible for keeping the database current. The involvement ranges from outright ownership of the properties to contributing and to maintenance and participation in governance or oversight. There is a wide array of such valuable historic resources: buildings, rooms, monuments, cemeteries, forests, landmarks, trails, and so forth. Many are open to the public and can serve as testaments to the continued work of DAR. Cultural heritage tourism is widely recognized today, and many DAR properties can enrich a travel experience. Why not plan to visit one of these historic sites on your next trip? Use the map on the website to chart your course. Check the committee page on the members' website for resources and helpful tools. So how do you get started? Search for online resources. Both the National Trust for Historic Preservation and the National Park Service, to name a few, provide abundant information. Your state historic preservation offices will also have state-focused projects that tie into some of the national initiatives. The field of cultural heritage tourism may also has many ideas. Regularly read area magazines. These can give you news of worthy historic preservation projects and individuals to recognize. Become involved with historic preservation organizations. When chapter members work individually with historic preservation organizations in their areas, the result can be valuable contacts and new ideas. You can learn a lot from professionals and possibly identify ways to partner with them on projects. Award the Medal and the Recognition Award. Have a ceremony to present these awards. Invite honored guests such as city officials, and be sure to notify the media. Publicize your event. This could result in increased applications for membership. Consider scheduling the ceremony to coincide with another appropriate community event. Frame and mat the certificate and medals for a handsome presentation. Awardees will be more likely to display them. If you are unable to frame them, be sure to use a certificate folder from the DAR store. Develop an historic preservation plan for your chapter. With just a little planning, you may be able to identify ways your chapter can become more involved with historic preservation in the coming months and years. See the checklist for developing a chapter plan for historic preservation on the website. Host an historic preservation program or symposium. Engage the public in the DAR mission of historic preservation, and share your enthusiasm by inviting professionals and expert speakers. Great projects often start small. Don't be afraid to jump in and take on a project or nominate a worthy group or person for an award. In summary, embrace our mission. Be a leader in your community. Set an example and educate the public about the importance of historic preservation. There are many ways to be involved. Promote the historic preservation grants by partnering with a community organization to apply, or consider a grant for a chapter or state-owned property. Recognize the good work of others with the Historic Preservation Medal or Recognition Award. More details and the associated forms can be found on the DAR members website, as well as contact information for the Historic Preservation Committee Chair and Vice Chairs. Rise and shine for historic preservation. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. We have received some questions that I would like to pose to you, and maybe you could just answer those.
Sure, I'd be happy to.
Okay, so the first one is, can you please comment on attributes that will help award applications and grants fall within reach and be successful?
Sure. Regarding the Medal and Recognition Award, be sure that the service is a volunteer service and not based on a paid position or related to for-profit work, and be sure to fully detail the work and quantify the results. The Historic Preservation Medal is the highest honor and is awarded for significant contributions over a period of time with significant long-term impact. Grants should be for projects that have a lasting impact and cannot be requested to fund a program or event.
Okay, great. Next question. Can a DAR historic marker be placed on a building that has been moved from its original location?
Well, actually, this is a question for the Office of the Historian General. They approve marker applications and maintain a file of previously approved DAR markers, so I would defer that question to them.
Okay, fair enough. Next question. May a state organization apply for an historic preservation grant for a project that supports a state regent's project?
Unfortunately, no. While a state can sponsor a grant for a project, they cannot request a grant to support a state regent's project.
All right. Does the sponsoring chapter complete the grant application?
Let's see. The organization that's requesting the grant that you're working with must complete the application. They must provide the required documents and show that matching funding has been acquired, and they sign the application. But the chapter or state also includes the sponsorship letter.
Okay, great. Does the committee have any printable handouts?
Yes. There is a flyer promoting the historic preservation grants that can be found on the committee web pages, and a new flyer for the work of the entire committee is being developed, so stay tuned. Also, I failed to say that with us this evening we have Carol Felson, who is the National Vice Chair for Historic Preservation Grants, so she may be able to answer some of the questions that are just related to grants if there are any other ones.
Okay, I think that's it. Carol, what's your email address again?
The email for the grants is hpgrants@nsdar.org.
Okay, well, that is all we have for questions tonight. So thank you very much to everyone who attended. Thank you, Leslie. That was an excellent presentation. And this will be the webinar, along with script and the Q&A, will be posted to the members website under the webinar library in about a week.
Thank you very much.